Hi everyone, and welcome to the Weekly Woo. We pulled Rose as our plant ally this week, and we had two animals that came out, Dolphin and Horse. I'd like to start with Rose first. So, Rose is not only incredibly powerful as we see it, right, in matter, but it is a symbol that represents safety and protection in the human collective consciousness. Now, the other thing about Rose is it is ruled by Venus, the planet of Venus, which is retrograde right now. We had a Sun-Venus conjunction on June 3rd, and Venus has disappeared from the night sky and will be reborn this week as a morning star. And the pattern that Venus makes in the sky in her orbit around the sun is actually a 5-petaled rose shape. So when we get this week, it's really a focus on these Venusian characteristics of pleasure, love, friendship, camaraderie. Now, the next layer of this is courage, because the root word for courage in Latin is cor, which means heart. So as we are all called upon to act and speak on our convictions of truth, the truth being one essential truth here, that we were conceived and created by one creator, however you see it. We all come from one place, and therefore we are all equal. And equality is the way of the future. There's no way around it. So the idea of courage, the word actually coming from the root word cor, that means heart in Latin. So we can't have true courage and power. We can't have right action unless we are coming from our heart. And that begs the question of, are you connected to your heart? What does it mean to be connected to your heart? There is a scientific fact that is becoming more and more well known that our heart actually has the largest magnetic field of any part of our body, of any organ, more than our brain. So this belief is leading scientists to really accept the fact that perhaps our consciousness doesn't reside in our head, that it resides in our heart. Now, when we are in our heart, the reason why we resist it is because there is a connection to our emotions that must happen to stay in this place. And the connection to our emotions requires, and here's Dolphin, that we breathe, and that we listen to our body, and that we listen to, as we breathe, where do we feel the swells of intensity, and how do we release them in healthy ways. So Dolphin, what a powerful animal. You know, sharks are afraid of them. I think this is fascinating. The true embodiment of light is the dolphin. And dolphins, I've been going to the beach a lot recently, and dolphins, they play. Even as they're fishing, it's play. Everything that they do is play. And when they're in their pods together, the way that they communicate, we still don't understand. So there's something incredibly magical about the dolphin. As we also study them, we realize that they're highly intelligent in ways that we can't really figure out. So there is a higher consciousness working in the energy of the dolphin that speaks to us this week. Now, when we get these two cards together, this harkens back to something I said in last week's Weekly Woo, which is, yes, we are in a time of incredible change, and it's like layer upon layer. And you guys, it doesn't stop here, right? It's predicted with astrologers that the end of the summer and the fall makes, the beginning of this year look like kindergarten. So we don't know what's coming. We don't know how much more intense things get. But one thing is clear. You can be an activist and still have pleasure in your life, right? You can be standing up for the truth, that one essential truth, that we are all created equal, that we were all created from one source, and that equality is the only path forward as we all mix and mingle. So there's something I wanted to speak about with this that I don't want to forget. I want to say it now. If you've watched my video on the energetic body, which I will link here, one thing is now known, right, in physics, that we all have magnetic fields, and the energy of thought and emotion is as real as any other energy we experience. There are so many things that are not seen that are actually the catalyst to manifestation. So it's vibration first, and then it becomes matter. All things operate in this way. So what's interesting is the internet, right, which we cannot see its connectivity, right, but we know it's connecting us because we're on our phones, we're in social media, everything we do is through the internet now. It is an invisible web of connectivity that it is the great equalizer. It has been. It's connected people thousands of miles across the globe who never would have been able to connect as if they're right there with each other. And you even look at these Zoom calls that we're all having. It's the great connector. And it's the underlying form of what is going to become physical. So that connectivity we all experience that we call the internet is the underlying form of what we are creating physically, which is a world of unity, a world of equality, a world of teamwork. Now, we're in the birthing stages of this. And birth is, I will speak from experience, it's bloody. And excuse my French, it's shitty, literally. And it's so painful, I can't even articulate the kind of pain I experienced giving birth to my son. It's really even difficult to think about. My brain kind of actually, I think it blocked it out. And that is what we are in right now. We are in the bloody, shitty, painful birth of a new world that is going to serve us all better. And what the idea of what is privilege is being deconstructed. Because the true privilege that we have as human beings is to be living in this place of heart-centered focus. That every act of courage, every time we speak up, it is so rooted in our heart that no one can come against us. No one can argue when we come from our heart in any action we take. So back to this idea of, yes, you're in the middle of giving birth to a new world. You're a part of it. And what do you do to give yourself pleasure during this time? How do you do it? Because you still have every right to experience joy and pleasure and fun, dancing and laughing, even though we're in the middle of a deconstruction of the old ways and the birth of a new and more beautiful, equal world. So the idea of play and pleasure, we're going to want this week to find pockets of this with our children, with our lovers, with our friends, on social media, right? Don't stop laughing just because we have a duty right now to be birthing this new world and standing up for what no longer works. Now, this leads me to horse. I love horses, and I'm sure you do too. But I have had some experiences on them that put the fear of Jesus in me. I grew up with horses. My sister has horses. My grandfather raced horses. My mother, grew up right. I mean, I think before she walked, she was on a horse. Horses are a huge part of my life. But horses are incredibly strong. The power that they wield that's why we say with cars, the horsepower. And that's how we describe the ability of the cars we have to, go fast and haul large, weight. Horse is about the use of power and alignment with integrity. Horse calls out if a power is being abused. If power is being abused, horse calls it out. So I did this movie Unconditional, and I had to ride a horse, full out run on this horse. And even though I was so familiar with horses, there was this heightened energy that came in because cameras were rolling. And you could feel the horse felt it too. And it was so terrifying because this horse acted on its instinct when I was on her. The energy that she picked up on was too much for her. And it became a very dangerous situation really fast because she instantly took the power in her reins, was no longer listening to me, and wanted away from the camera truck. And in fact, ran away from it, putting herself and me in a really precarious circumstance. It's this instinctual power that's rising up in all of us right now. And it has to, because we're birthing a new world. There's no way around it. But when we think about what is power, and what kind of power do we really have as individuals? This week I was on a call with many different women of different races, and we had a real conversation about what power is. And as a white woman, I was able to see in this conversation, there's been so much guilt. My family lineage, although there's Native American blood in me, the way that even happened was an abuse of power. So I'm incredibly angry at my ancestors and how things have happened in this country. The colonization of it, the rape and destruction of the indigenous people, and the horrible things that happened to the African slaves that were brought here by some of my ancestors. The abuse of power, right? We can't deny that is what this country was created with. And yet this country was also created because the Puritans wanted freedom from the King of England. So the whole entire basis of this country is rooted in power and freedom, in very conflicting, dynamic, polarizing ways. And all of it is up for our courageous analysis right now. Because, true freedom, true sovereignty comes from the heart, comes from being aligned with Source, comes from knowing that deeper part of yourself, that highest part of yourself, and acting from that. But we have to break down some structures, and that's what we're doing. So Horse says, how are you using your power? Now, something I talked about this week in this call was, as a white woman, I have the power to save Black lives. If I see that there's an injustice going on to a Black person, I can step in and say, wait a second, stop. I have that power because I'm white. And that power actually belongs to each and every one of us. And until we see that, we do have to stand up. So Horse also talks about the idea of sharing knowledge and wisdom. And this is fascinating because if you're interested in more woo this week, I do an extended weekly woo on Patreon for patrons. And I encourage you to go over there and join. There's a tier. I think the lowest tier, is $5.55 a month. And a lot of the cards that I pulled for the extended talk about this wisdom, that knowledge turned to wisdom. And how does knowledge get turned to wisdom? When it's filtered through the heart. So when we're living in our heart, we are in an egoless state, right? And that means that we couldn't abuse someone else physically. We couldn't abuse the earth. We couldn't abuse a child. We couldn't abuse someone because they're different from us, because we're living in our heart. It's impossible if you're living in your heart. to actually see someone else as less than you. So true freedom, and that means freedom from resentment, from anger, from jealousy, from envy. True freedom is when we are living in this heart-centered place, no matter what your skin color, no matter how you gender identify, no matter what your ancestors did or did not do. You have the freedom today to choose courage, which its root word is heart, to live in your heart and take action from there. That does not mean you're complacent. That does not mean you're apathetic. That means that your action and what you say comes from your soul. So another thing, we have an incredible amount of Saturn energy in the cosmic weather right now, and we have had for many, many months. And an amazing antidote for that heavy, restrictive, fearful, confining, old structures breaking down to build new ones is rose essential oil or rose perfume oil, or just having roses around you. This is a reason why if you look on my Instagram, I'm constantly taking pictures of roses. There is a multidimensional healing vibration that this plant gives us. And my son just recently got a microscope, and we looked into a rose petal leaf to see what its cells look like, and literally it looks like tiny little rainbows, little circles of rainbows. So this is real, you guys. Everything is vibrational first, and the rose is incredibly high vibrational and is really going to assist you this week. Whether you're man, woman, however you gender identify, find yourself some rose oil, or get some roses, or just take some time to stop. It's spring. Take some time to stop and look at the roses around you. So it's a very clear message. True freedom that no one can ever take away from you, right, is the freedom to choose to live in your heart center, aligned with love, unconditional love for yourself and for all things. Dolphin and horse are very similar here, and I love that they're looking at each other this way. That things are going to change. There's no way around it, and they have to. And this is a beautiful thing to celebrate, and to remember that when it gets scary, and when the power that is increasing within each and every one of us to stand up and say, no, we're not going to take this anymore, it can bring up anger and resentment, not just from this lifetime, from our ancestral memory, and from the very DNA that we hold, the stories of the past. And if reincarnation is indeed the truth, then we have lived through this, these oppressions that have gone through the eons of time that humans have been alive. We've all experienced them. If reincarnation is indeed the truth, then we've been every color, every gender, every economic bracket. By this time, we are holding all of that in our bodies, in our DNA, in our spiritual, etheric body. Dolphin says, breathe through it. When it gets really intense, dolphins actually hold their breath, and then when they come up for air, they like pop it out. It's a release for them. So I want to send you guys to Wim Hof, and I don't get anything by doing this. I don't even know the man, but his breathing technique, there is something incredibly intuitively magical to it. And maybe he's just remembering something that we forgot. It's incredible because it involves holding the breath. And there are many different kinds of breathing techniques that you can use where the breath is held. This is incredibly calming to our limbic system and to our nervous system. And Dolphin definitely points to this. I also feel like Dolphin asks us to get to the ocean if you're near it. There's so much healing in those negative ions that the ocean gives off. And that salt water is, salt water has been used in magical ritual from the beginning of time. to absorb negativity, to absorb negative energies, to absorb negative thought forms. Every time you go to the ocean shore, that happens. And now if you add your intention to it, it becomes even more powerful. Because, right, the intention is that invisible power that's going to bring the manifestation to physical form. So thank you so much for viewing, everyone. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe right now, and please also press the little bell button, the notification button, so that you will know when any of these videos come out. If you're watching on Instagram, thank you so much for your attention today. I know we have so much content to look through, especially now. I just want to end with this image because it's just so powerful. This circle right here that you see, this is the pattern that Venus makes in the sky as she orbits the sun. And we are in the middle of this cycle. We just had this Sun-Venus conjunction on June 3rd, like I said, which is the rebirth of Venus. And all these ideas of hatred and resentment and that which would hold you back from living in your heart, they're being burned away if you allow them. We can be activists and we can stand up and we can fight for what's right and still be in our heart center. And that is a process of letting go of anger and resentment. And maybe that's something that we're going to have to do every day this week. You know, I know for me, very personally, if I wake up and I am feeling angry and resentful for things that have happened in the past, maybe things I don't even remember, I work it out of my body. I use the EFT tapping technique. I move, I shake, I dance. If I have to, I scream in a pillow or beat a pillow with a wiffle ball bat. Move it out. Breathe it out. Use the power that you have to get rid of the anger and resentment so that you can take that clear action that is going to lead to actual change. I think one of the biggest fears we all have right now is this movement actually going to do anything literal and practical to create the change that we need? Well, we can't do that if we're filled with the anger and the resentment. So breathe through it, so that you can be in your heart center truly, acting from a place of unconditional love. That's where great, true change is going to happen. That's where the power lies. And it's amazing that we're seeing all these peaceful protests. That's what this is. And we got to continue until we see the real change. Woo. Compassion for others, even if they don't believe what we believe, is the key to moving forward. Because each of us is living in our own universe. And even as we've seen, like in the collective, as like, you know, those who are wanting equality, there's even dissension among us of, well, what's the best way to represent it? And what are you supposed to say? And what are you not supposed to say? Right now, we need to be having compassion for one another, because this is a very difficult, painful, bloody birth. And just like the mother in childbirth who needs the support of the doula, of the midwife, of the doctor, of the nurse, of the husband, of the boyfriend, of the partner, of the wife, whatever it is, of the mother. That mother who's giving birth needs all the support she can have to maintain her power. I mean, one of the things about birth is there is a facing of, oh my God, am I going to die through this? We're in this now as a collective. We are the birthing mother as a collective, and we need to support each other, not tear each other down as we push this new earth out. When a child is born, right, the mother who was a girl, so to speak, if we look at maiden, mother, crone archetypes, the maiden dies to become the mother. And there is that part of the collective, the maiden, right, who let her power be abused, who gave her power away, who's dying. And now the mother, as the child is being born, the mother is being born. For every birth, there is something that is lost and dies. And that is what we're in. Thank you so much for viewing, everyone. May this week be blessed. May you find your juicy pockets of pleasure. And may you channel your power through your heart. Thank you.